now what have we seen? We have seen some of the early experiments done in order to identify the factors responsible for photosynthesis. And some of the early experiments that we have seen are the experiments by John Priestley, by Jan Ingenhousz, by Julius Wolschatz, by T.W. Engelmann and by Cornelius von Neil. And all of these experiments, they went on to prove that light is essential, carbon dioxide and oxygen are involved in the process, and of course this takes place in the green parts of the plant. So we know all this information from the early experiments, and now we are going to move into the how does photosynthesis take place. More importantly, where does photosynthesis take place and what are the products of the photosynthesis. Now we are going to see the where first, then we will see the how, and third we will see what are all involved in photosynthesis. Fine. Now we are going to see where does the photosynthesis take place. Okay. So as you know, photosynthesis, we know that it takes place in the leaf. So I have stuck a leaf to the board in order to make it easier for you to visualize what is going on. Now if you magnify inside the leaf, okay, you will have what is called as plant cells, and these plant cells are called as mesophyll cells. Okay, they are called as mesophyll. That is the name given to these cells. And then within a cell, if this is a cell, if this is a plant cell, within a cell there are many things. Okay, some may be important for storing fats, some may be important for transporting materials in and outside the cell. But for us, what is most interesting is the chloroplast, which is one of the cell organelles which is present inside the cell. Say for example, this is the chloroplast. Okay, and now these specialized structures or cell organelles are the areas which are specialized enough to carry out photosynthesis. Okay, now how are they arranged? Basically, any chloroplast will have an outer covering. So it will have an outer membrane, and within that it will have one more membrane, inner membrane. So outside is the cell, and within the chloroplast there is what is called as stacks of materials are found. Okay, so we have what is called as an inner membrane and an outer membrane. Two membranes you have, that is two coverings. It is like putting two shirts one on top of the other, or putting a banian and then putting a shirt. Okay, it is the same. Two membranes are there, inner membrane and outer membrane. And inside the chloroplast, okay, so inside, outside, this is an easy way to remember. Inside the chloroplast, you have what is called as thylakoid. Okay, these are specialized structures which are called as thylakoids, and these are the structures whose membranes means the outer lining. Those membranes have specialized pigments which can absorb the radiation from the sunlight, specific radiations from the sunlight, which we will be seeing in the next step. That is, within the chloroplast you have thylakoids, and outside you have what is called as stroma. And if the thylakoids are arranged, they will look something like this. This is typically how the thylakoids will be stacked one on top of the other. And here it will be covered with a membrane, and that membrane contains 4 pigments. Now you will have to remember these pigments very easily. There is a very easy method to remember these 4 pigments. You must come with me. Okay? So we will take all of this out. We have 4 pigments. What are they? You put an A, B, C. Okay? And before the C, you put an X. So where is it? Chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, and xanthophyll and carotenoids. Okay, so these are the 4 pigments that you will have to remember. How do you remember them? Chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, xanthophyll, carotenoids. So A, B, X and C. Okay, write A, B, C and then put an X in the middle. Now each of these pigments absorbs light at a very specific wavelength, or they are of different colors. There are 4 colors that you should remember. How do you remember them? Put B, Y, Y, Y. Now there are 4 pigments with 4 colors. And then put blue green, green, yellow, orange, yo. Okay, so how do you remember them? A, B, C, put an X, chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, xanthophylls and carotenoids. Each of them are responsible for a particular color. What are they? Put B and 3 Y's. So it is something like BY cube. Okay. So put a B, Y, Y, Y. This is how you remember. And then put GG for the first, leave the third and then write it over here. So it is blue green, yellow and yellow orange. So this is a very simple way in which you can remember how the 4 pigments are named and to what color do they correspond to. Now what does all this mean? It means that if you grind a leaf and you put it in a chromatography paper, the pigments will separate out into the individual colors and you can see them as different color bands, and these colors will generally be observed in a paper chromatography. Okay, so this is the general structure and you should have this visualization in your mind. And the thylakoids, which I showed you with the milk peda, they are linked to each other by what is called as a stroma lamellae. Okay, here if they are linked together, then they are linked together by a structure called as the stroma lamellae. So this is what all these names mean. Okay, so once again, I will repeat it once again for your sake. Where does photosynthesis take place? It takes place in the green parts of the leaf. Those cells are called mesophyll cells, and inside the cells you have cell organelles, and the cell organelle which is of particular interest to us is the chloroplast. The chloroplast has an inner and an outer membrane, an inner membrane and an outer membrane, and inside the chloroplast you have what is called as thylakoids, which are specialized structures. They are present either singularly, you call them grana, or if they are stacked one above the other, then they are called granum. Generally they are found stacked one above the other. And just outside the thylakoid is the stroma, which is the liquid portion of the chloroplast cell. And if the thylakoids are linked to each other, then the structure is called stroma lamellae, and the membrane of the thylakoids have 4 pigments which are responsible for light absorption. They are A, B, X and C. Chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, xanthophylls and carotenoids. Fine, till here it is clear. And each of these pigments correspond to a different color. How do you remember them? B, Y, Y, Y. Blue green, yellow and yellow orange. Okay, so all these words and these sequence, you must remember them properly. If you are not understanding, please repeat the video one more time and watch it again so that this becomes clear to you. Only if you are confident about this particular part can we move on to the next step. Okay. Okay. So now we are going to go inside the process of photosynthesis. Before we do that, let us see the full equation for photosynthesis. Okay. So it is 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, or just carbon dioxide. Remember it for now. Carbon dioxide, water, H2O for water, giving rise in the presence of sunlight. They give rise to the formation of glucose, and glucose leads to the formation of starch. Okay. But this glucose is formed, and byproducts are again water molecules and oxygen molecules. Now we know from the earlier experiments how we deduced each and every step. Fine. In order to balance the equation, we have 6 molecules of carbon dioxide plus 12 molecules of water giving rise to glucose, and then you have 6 molecules of water here and 6 molecules of oxygen. That is just balancing the chemical reaction. But what is most important here to understand is what are the products or the chemicals which are essential for photosynthesis. Light is important, water is important, carbon dioxide is important. Okay, but carbon dioxide is not initially available, at least here at this particular step. Where each one is required and how each person takes part in the reaction, that only we are going to see. So there are 2 phases to photosynthesis, as I told you earlier. One is the photo phase, the light phase, and the next is the synthesis part, where the actual synthesis takes place. So carbon dioxide shown in this equation actually comes in picture during the synthesis phase. It does not come into the picture in the first phase. Okay. So now we will see overall the photo phase. Okay, how the light gets absorbed. So what is involved? Photo phase. So it is also called as photochemical space, because or photochemical phase. Correctly understand. This means that light and chemicals are involved. Okay. So there are some steps here. The first step is the light will have to come inside and get absorbed by a system present inside the what? Inside the plant cells. Okay, inside the chloroplast. I already told you there are thylakoids, and these thylakoids are the ones which are specialized for light absorption. And thylakoids have a membrane, they have pigments. Okay, so first step is light has to come inside and get absorbed. So that is the source of energy. That is why we need the sun. Okay. The next step simultaneously which takes place is the splitting of water. Now when water splits up, it gives you hydrogen molecules and oxygen molecules. And the oxygen that we breathe in, that the plants give out as part of the photosynthesis, happens right here. Okay. And why do plants split water? In order to get the hydrogen molecule. So as I told you, we have a release of oxygen. We have the splitting of water. When water splits, we have a release of oxygen molecules. Now, what is the outcome of all these processes? The outcome of all these processes is the formation of two energy molecules. These molecules are required for the synthesis phase. Okay, those are ATP and NADPH. These two molecules will be formed in this light reaction, and that is why this particular process is very important. Now, next we will be seeing how exactly the light part of the photosynthetic pathway works, or the photochemical phase works. Okay, so let me revise once again. This is the equation for photosynthesis. You have carbon dioxide, you have water, resulting in the formation of glucose plus water and oxygen. You have photosynthesis, where the photo phase is also called as the photochemical phase. This is also called as the light reaction. There are a few steps which are very important. First, the light gets absorbed, light absorption. You also have a release of oxygen along with the splitting of water molecules here. After that, all of these will lead to the end product, which is energy molecule. There are two energy molecules of particular interest to us. They are the ATP and the NADPH energy molecules. Okay, now we are going to go into the light reactions in photosynthesis. Okay, now very quick review of what we have done so far. I have already told you that photosynthesis is actually two steps: photo and synthesis. Okay, where the actual reaction in the presence of light takes place, and where the synthesis of the energy compound takes place. Or what is being synthesized? Glucose is being synthesized, and glucose turns into starch, which is the building material for the plant. Till this, it should be clear for you. Now, before we go into the process, there is something that you should understand. These are all what are called as photo reactions, or in other words, light reactions. Okay, they take place in the presence of light. What light? Sunlight. For now, let us understand that it is sunlight. And as you know, sunlight contains, if you pass sunlight through a prism, sunlight contains a lot of radiations. We call them as the electromagnetic spectrum. In that, the light radiations that you can see with your eyes are what we call as visible light. And the range for the visible light is 400 nanometers to 700 nanometers. This is what we generally understand. Now here, for photosynthesis, two particular wavelengths are very important. They are 680 nanometers, one, and the other one is 700 nanometers. So 1 and 2, these two are very important for us, because each corresponds to a different photosynthesis system inside the plant system. Okay. Did you understand when I said wavelength of light? I hope you understood. There are two more concepts that you should understand before we go into the process. One is, when I say wavelength, what I actually mean is, you see, light is a photon. It contains energy. And that is the reason why plants need light from the sun, because they don't bother about the light, but they are bothered about the energy within that light. Fine? Now, let us imagine that you have a bar here. This is how we generally measure. So, if the light is moving along, it will move as a wave. Okay? And the length between these two waves is what we call as wave length. So, get this concept very clear. Now, the next concept that you should understand, when one is wavelength, and this wavelength, I explained it to you that visible light has a wavelength range of 400 nanometers to 700 nanometers. Fine. What is most important to us is 680 nanometers and the other one is 700 nanometers. This much is clear to you. One more concept you should understand. Okay. So we understood the concept of wavelength. The other concept that you should understand is the concept of energy excitation. Okay. For this, you have a nucleus and you have what is called as orbitals. Now suppose we have electrons. Here we have electrons. What do we mean when an electron is excited? It means that when an energy strikes one particular electron, it gets the energy to jump from one orbital to the next, and then we say that it has reached a higher energy state. Why? Because there is a pull towards the center, and the farther away it moves, the more energized the electron is, and so we have an electron. So that is what is meant by an excited electron. It needs a lot of energy input to push an electron from one shell orbital to the next shell orbital. This you might have learned from your physics or chemistry lectures. Fine. Now you have learned the basic concepts behind photosynthesis, but now we are actually going to go inside the light reaction. Fine. Fine. Now, as I already told you, you have the sun, and the first step that we are going to see is light absorption, okay, in the photoreaction. Now you have the sun, a beautiful smiling sun, and you have the light falling on the leaf. Inside the leaf, the plant cells, we call them as mesophyll cells. Inside the mesophyll cells, there are specialized structures called chloroplast. Within the chloroplast, we have what is called as the thylakoids, which are actually the battery system of the plant cell, which are then divided. You can call them as grana or granum, depending on whether they are singular or plural. Generally, they are stacked one above the other. The outside region is called as the stroma, and the inside region is called as the lumen. Okay, and the thylakoids are combined, joined with each other. You call them as stroma lamellae. Okay. Now, coming to the thylakoid membrane outside, you have what is called as a pigment complex. Okay. Generally, there is a pigment complex of carotenoids, chlorophyll B and chlorophyll A. So now I am going to go inside the subject directly. Fine, stay with me. This, inside the thylakoid membrane, you have a system which is the photosystem 2. Okay, in the beginning we are going to see about the photosystem 2, which is inside a part of the thylakoid membrane. Are you with me so far? Right. Now when sunlight of radiation, as I told you before, an important radiation is 680 nanometers. So when sunlight of 680 nanometer wavelength strikes that particular photosystem, it is received by this particular pigment complex, and as the light travels through, the electrons in those lights get excited. Okay, and here they reach their maximum capacity, they get maximum energy, they get energized, and the electrons are so excited. And here the electrons present in chlorophyll A become very excited. They get excited how? They get excited because of the energy that they receive from the sun. It is very important that you understand these two things very clearly. The electron is present inside the pigment complex, particularly at chlorophyll A. The energy required to excite this electron is 680 nanometers, which is coming from the sun. So that particular wavelength hits the electron is excited, now it is ready to move. Right. Now we are going to go inside the thylakoid membrane and find out what happened exactly to that excited electron. Okay. So now we are inside the thylakoid membrane. The outside is the stroma, inside is the lumen. Fine. And this is the thylakoid membrane. In case you are getting confused, let me show it to you again. This is the thylakoid, okay, and you are here. And that is what I have magnified and shown here. Fine. Now, the excited electron is here. Photosystem 2. And why is it called photosystem 2? Because this was discovered after photosystem 1 was discovered. But it is placed in the membrane in this particular order. Okay. So, electron is available here. But from where did this electron come in the first place? That is very important. It came into existence because of another process that is simultaneously happening along with the absorption of light. And that is called as the splitting of water. Water molecule will get split. Okay, so you have H2O which gets split to H and O, hydrogen and oxygen molecules. Now do you want to balance that equation? Yes, we can. Okay, now we are going to balance that equation. So I need, this O is of no good to me. I need oxygen to breathe. So we will put a 2 here. And I told you that this reaction is to provide electrons. So I have to add some electrons. And now I have to balance the whole thing. So it will be 2H2O giving rise to 4 hydrogen ions plus oxygen and 4 electrons here. Okay? And this is H plus. Now the equation is balanced. So now I have H plus ions and I have electrons and I have oxygen which I can use to breathe. Actually, this is a byproduct of photosynthesis. Oxygen is released as a byproduct of photosynthesis, and that is why oxygen we are getting for our breathing purpose. This is fine, and this is what is being supplied here, and this electron is the one which is getting excited by sunlight at the nanometer of 680. And what is that nanometer? It is the wavelength of sunlight which is in the visible spectrum. Okay? Be very clear about where everything is coming from. Now, the electron is excited. The electron jumps out of the photosystem. It is captured by what is called as an electron acceptor. And this electron acceptor will transport that electron along a chain-like system, a series of proteins, which is actually called as the electron transport chain. If you want to remember it, you can remember it as the ETC. The E going to the EA, going to the ETC. E going to the EA to the ETC. Electron getting excited, going via the electron acceptor into the electron transport chain. And where does it go? Where does the next train stopping end? It stops at another photosystem called as the photosystem 1. Okay, here what happens, what you should understand here is, this is a similar system to photosynthesis, photosystem 2, but here instead of being able to absorb light at a wavelength of 680 nanometers, this system is so designed that it can only absorb light at a wavelength of 700 nanometers. So this is the basic difference. Otherwise both of them are same. The pigments and other systems are all the same. So here the same thing that is happening in photosynthesis 2, system 2 should happen here also. Is it not? So it is happening. The electrons are getting excited when visible light at a wavelength of 700 nanometers strikes. Now visible light has a wavelength of 400 to 700 nanometers. That means simultaneously light at the visible wavelength is striking the leaf at all places. And that means both 680 nanometers is available and 700 nanometers is available to both the photosystems simultaneously. So when they are available, both of them will have very excited electrons. Now you have an excited electron which has come all the way from photosystem 2 to photosystem 1, and photosystem 1 is also having enough excited electrons to jump. Got it? Now there is a lot of excited electrons here. But what happens when the electrons jump? Another thing also happens. which will be useful for us much later in the lecture. The H plus ions, okay, they also transfer, and when they transfer, they increase what is called as the proton gradient. Okay, I think I am going a little bit too far here. So we will stop with this. When it goes to photosynthesis to 1, the electrons also get excited, but this happens only at 700 nanometers. From here, it is transferred to here. And when this happens, something interesting happens, and we will see what that is. Now, very quickly we are going to go and see the third phase. First you saw the light absorption, then we saw the splitting of water. The electrons are now excited. They have moved from photosystem 2. Okay, always remember this photosystem 2. The electrons have got excited. The electrons got excited. From where did the electrons come? They came from water molecules. What was the outcome of this? Oxygen, which is important to us. The excited electrons travel along an electron acceptor via an electron transport chain, which I will write it for short form for saving time as ETC, and they reach another photosystem which is called photosystem 1. This was discovered first, this is discovered later. So this is photosystem 1, and these two are also called as reaction centers, and the pigments which are responsible for exciting the electrons are also called as light harvesting complexes or pigment complexes. So there are different names for all of these things. Now this absorbs light at a wavelength of 680 nanometers. This absorbs wavelength at 700 nanometers. During the course of the movement of the electron from here to here, you have the formation of energy molecules. During the course of the movement of the electron from PS2 to PS1, you have the formation of ATP, which is an energy molecule. It is formed from ADP. Okay? This is an important energy molecule. And when it reaches here, another energy molecule, formation of NADP to NADPH. This is another energy molecule. This is number 2. So one energy molecule, two energy molecules. Fine. There are the formation of NADP to NADPH and ADP to ATP. Now, understand one thing very, very clearly. It is not absolutely necessary that at all times light at a radiation or at a wavelength of both 680 nanometers and 700 nanometers fall simultaneously in a particular plant cell. It is not necessary. Sometimes it may happen that only a wavelength of 680 nanometers will fall on the leaf. Then what can happen? There are certain processes that will happen and which will not happen. Whether they happen or do not happen depends a lot on whether that particular system has enzymes. Yes, enzymes are proteins which are also functioning as catalysts for change of one chemical species to another. So, for the formation of ATP, which means it is formed from ADP to ATP, you have an addition of an inorganic phosphate molecule. That process is called as phosphorylation. Phosphorylation is the story of the formation of ATP molecules, and this will happen only in this particular system at a wavelength of 680 nanometers, and here you generally refer it to as, in a general process, both ATP and NADP molecules are present. But this process cannot happen here. or rather it may happen here, but NADPH cannot be found in this particular system. Getting confused? Okay, don't worry. You have two kinds of phosphorylation. You have cyclic phosphorylation and you have the non-cyclic phosphorylation. For now, you understand the basic concepts. Okay. Cyclic phosphorylation, what does it mean? As I told you, phosphorylation is the story of the synthesis or the formation of ATP. And where does it take place? As the electrons move from PS to. And this happens only when a wavelength of 680 nanometers is available. Now suppose, let us imagine that there is a situation where there is only a wavelength of 680 nanometers coming inside. Then this system is shut off. Okay, this system will not work because this system will get activated only when it receives a wavelength of 700 nanometers. That is one reason. So the entire process will start happening only here, the formation of ATP molecules. So you have the generation of electrons from the splitting of water. The electrons will get excited and it will move and result in the formation of ATP, and this process will keep circulating here. This is called as cyclic phosphorylation. Okay. The other process where ATP moves forward and joins up with NADPH, and then both of them together go along with carbon dioxide and become part of the Calvin cycle, which is part of the dark reaction. Then that entire process is called non-cyclic phosphorylation. Okay. Okay, now we are going to see how exactly that ATP molecule is going to be produced. Okay, or we are going to see the synthesis of ATP. As I told you earlier, ATP molecules are produced when you have what? Cyclic or non-cyclic photo-phosphorylation. Okay, that was the word I did not tell earlier. Photo, because it happens in the presence of light. It is involved in photosynthesis. So phosphorylation is the process of the synthesis of ATP molecules. But where exactly does it take place, or how does it take place? Now the idea is still a bit fuzzy, but we do know that it is being produced. It is a very important energy molecule, and therefore we have what is called as a hypothesis. Okay, and it is also called as a Chemiosmotic Hypothesis, and I will tell you why exactly it is called Chemiosmotic Hypothesis. Okay, but first let us come back to the plant cell here. So where are we? We are here, the lumen, which is in the inside of the thylakoid membrane. This is the membrane, and outside the membrane you have the stroma. Fine. Now, I already told you that you have two sources of electrons, or the major source of electron is from the splitting of water, and the splitting of water also gives you H plus ions. This is a source of proton. There is another source of proton. Where is that coming from? Okay. So one source is from the splitting of water. Where is that coming from? Okay. So one source is from the splitting of water. Another source for proton is when the electrons are moving from one photosystem to the other. Exactly when an electron acceptor molecule is trying to transport an electron across, what will happen? There is an exchange of proton taking place from the outside to the inside, and that is another source of protons. And what is happening here exactly? At the exact surface of the thylakoid membrane, there is going to be an accumulation of H plus ions. Okay, this is going to increase in concentration, and what that creates is called as a proton gradient. what is meant by a proton gradient, you would have seen different colors. Some colors are intense, and as you go down, the gradient of the color decreases. Like that, the concentration of protons is very high here, and as you go down, the concentration of the protons is low, and you call this as a proton gradient. Okay, so this is what is meant by a proton gradient. There is a very high concentration of protons here and a very low concentration of protons here. Now, where have you heard that before? High concentration, low concentration. Yes, you have heard it in osmosis. And because chemicals are involved here, you call it as chemical osmosis. The movement of ions from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration is called as osmosis. And since there are chemicals involved here, you call it as chemiosmosis. Fine? And this is a hypothesis, as I told you. So it is a chemiosmotic hypothesis. This is what it means. Okay, I told you that there is an accumulation of protons. What happens is there is an enzyme here. It's called ATP synthase. This is a protein. And this protein actually functions like a pump between the outside and the inside of the membrane. So when there is an accumulation and this accumulated protons moves in and out through the pump. When it moves out, this particular enzyme gets enough energy to generate ATP molecules. That is, from ADP it will generate ATP. But it will not generate it for free. It will generate it only if you give it enough protons. And the protons which have accumulated in that particular area, they give them that energy when they are transported across the membrane. The ATP synthase enzyme will result in the synthesis of ATP. The movement of protons to and fro the membrane due to the formation of a proton gradient result in the formation of a ATP molecule. Okay, that is one energy molecule. Now there is one more enzyme called NADP reductase enzyme, which is responsible for the formation of NADPH, which requires protons again. So these protons are also getting accumulated here. So that proton gradient is what is fundamental to the understanding of this particular hypothesis. So that is the most important keyword. What? The proton gradient, which you will have to remember when answering a question on the synthesis of ATP. Phosphorylation is the name of the process. There are two types of phosphorylation, cyclic and non-cyclic. And the formation of ATP, you can mention all these steps, especially how the proton gradient is formed. And you now understand that there is an accumulation of protons, so it moves from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration, and it is pumped back by the activity of the enzymes. And what are those enzymes? There are two enzymes. One is ATP synthase, okay, and the other enzyme is NADP reductase. So two enzymes, two energy molecules coming out of which kind of reaction? Light reaction. And light reactions in photosynthesis, light reaction, three major steps. What are they? Light absorption, splitting of water, formation of energy molecules. Light absorption, what is important? 680, 700 nanometers. Splitting of water, why is it important? It gives you oxygen and it gives you protons. Formation of energy molecules, why is it important? It gives you ATP and it gives you NADPH molecules. Good.